This is called The Secret History of America. This may be the greatest conspiracies on earth. I found this article online, and so can you. You can check it out on my website as well, salvationanointed.com. It says that this document may be the most important document that you ever read. Now, do you believe in a grand conspiracy? Or do you believe that Oswald, that guy, acted alone? Do you believe that the government is corrupt? And if so, to what extent? That may depend on how willing you are to open your eyes to see and your mind for that. Why is it that the more things change, the more they seem to stay the same? Why doesn't society ever seem to grow up? Most people grow up thinking and believe that the world exists the way that it does today because it's at the discretion of humanity that has taken it and chosen this. The information that I will discuss in this introduction to this catalog is meant to present to you the idea that history is not being created by chance anyways, but rather by design. The road that we are taking as a nation in America and as a human race on the planet Earth is paved for us in advance, and for that matter sold to us for profit. Many people talk of conspiracies such as Watergate and the Iran-Contra, or the savings and loan scandals, or the Federal Reserve, the October Surprise, Kennedy, the Freemasons, the Council on Foreign Relations, and even the Trilateral Commission. Well, for that matter, even gray aliens. But very few people know the real facts, enough to explain them, because they are not very researched themselves. As information comes down the pipeline, it becomes distorted and confused, because most of the people passing along the information do not know the entire story themselves. They have not researched more information about this by themselves. Again, this is all about our personal responsibility. And they tend to be biased as well. They tend to have an angle in which this information is put out, usually because they have ulterior motives, or an ulterior motive. I can only state from research of the 7 years of what I believe to be the truth, mostly based off of hard facts, or at least 5,000 to 10,000 years of hard facts. Mankind has been aware of more scientific and spiritual facts than we are currently aware of today. And as a great society and nation, the libraries of Alexandria, which held the collection of the world's greatest knowledge, existed in Egypt thousands of years ago. The Essenes were just one secret sect of Gnostics, which were knowledge holders, that existed around 2,000 years ago. Since the earliest times of pagan groups and nature religions, the sun has been considered a symbol for life. The ancients of pagan groups believed that the sun gave off its energy, and it was giving its life for us. They believe that the Son of God, the light of the world, is all salvation because He has risen. He is therefore our eternal Savior. There has always been a struggle between light and dark. These are the forces in the world. When the sun goes down and it becomes dark, we can't see. We naturally fear what we don't know, and since we cannot see in the dark, we don't know what's there to fear. So we fear. When the sun sets, this is another word in Egyptian for Satan, set, it would get dark. But when the sun was on the horizon, Horus, translated to Jesus, it would be called the Savior. This formed the basis of early Christianity. The Essenes, as well as other secret sects or societies around this time, were considered priesthoods, so that the early church was established as a knowledge center with ideas encoded symbolically symbolically into those religious texts. After time, symbols lose their meaning except to those who are initiated. Essentially, they held the knowledge of archetypal energies. Now, that bonds the spirit to the matter. These energies are expressed in mathematics and in Greek Germantia, called sacred geometry. The word occult means hidden. They took the knowledge and hid it and made it appear to be evil so that they would know it and they could establish control over us that much easier. This allowed the early guild of bricklayers or masons to be established, making it possible to build great pyramids, etc. Now, if everybody knew how to build a pyramid, then not only would Pharaoh's tomb be no greater than Joe Schmo, your neighbor's cottage, but the Masons would lose a lot of money building great castles and churches throughout Europe. This was the basis of early capitalism. But we will discuss all of that later. The sacred mushroom. Whoa, this is interesting. Ingesting and cannabis-smoking shamans are tribe spirit leaders, in a sense, and they practice inducing a state of consciousness in warrior tribesmen to temporarily replace their consciousness with animal consciousness, perform certain tasks, or learn spiritual lessons or principles. There were special groups called assassin cults, for lack of a better way of describing it, that were trained in the early times using substances like hashish, which is why they were called Hashashins, until Napoleon was almost killed and renamed them the Assassins. Although these two practices are not identical, they are similar and related. While the first example may be considered early natural mind control in the sense of learning to control your own mind, the second example could be considered a manipulative mind control in the sense that participants were trained under this hallucinogens to kill for God or Allah. The assassins, as well as a society called the Order of Lady of Zion, S-I-O-N, Zion. 5 out of 10 founders of these groups founded the Knights Templar. This appeared about the same time in 1090 AD. Out of the Order of the Lady of Zion came a group called the Notre Dame de Zion, which is what set up the Knights Templar. The Templars and Assassins had interlocking affairs and philosophies. They also had ongoing fights as well as commercial dealings with the Templars, pronounced vows to poverty, and in the meantime amassed great fortunes for the church, actually themselves, and were responsible for financing the Crusades and other bloody religious wars. They were also some of the first to set up banks in Jerusalem. These were temple banks, which occasionally were raided for their gold, and this forced the Templars to develop branch banking, or putting your money in several different banks, so that it doesn't all get taken at once. This is where the idea of the central bank and its local branches comes from. This was the model for banking in Europe and America. The Knights Templar became more popular when they were exposed in the 4th century and banished by the king. Jacques de Molay was burned at the stake for being a homosexual and heretic. A portion of the Templars' wealth was seized by the king and handed over to basically his sister society, called the Knights Hospitallers. They were the branch of Templars responsible for the hospital or medical facilities in the kingdom. There is evidence to suggest that the Templars may have carried themselves on as the Rosicrucians for the next couple of centuries. This really doesn't matter too much, though, because all of the information and the orders or secret societies are offshoots of one. They are all Masonic in nature because of the nature of the information that they possess. The same secret societies and old European bloodline families are in control of the world today. To better understand what they do, we need to first look at their philosophies and ideas. One major motto of theirs is the ordo ab chaos, or order out of chaos. First, they create chaos, then they propose the solution, which is order, secretly from behind the scenes to control a given situation. David Icke, which is a British philosopher of our time, says problem, reaction, solution, which is another way of describing the same system. There are different areas of Freemasonry, and it's all a hierarchy of power, believe it or not. Occasionally, Masonic groups will work together against each other, for a matter of fact, in the public forum through the agencies which they both control, but they are united behind the scenes. You will see examples of what I'm talking about very soon, as the first Masonic lodges in England in the 1600s, and within a century they were spread throughout most of Europe, including Germany and France, and the colonies of early America. One of the purposes that they served was as a forum for elite individuals to meet and discuss their political and social views without fear of religious persecution. Remember, just a couple of centuries earlier, under the Rome in the Dark Ages, they would kill you if you didn't believe that the moon was made of green cheese. In Rome, they realized that they could not rule the world by themselves, and that they would need a consensus of nations, or a united kingdom, or United Nations. The symbol of fascism is a bundle of sticks wrapped together with a hatchet blade or axe tied into it. It represents a world consensus of power, or axis of power. And it appeared on the U.S. Senate flag still today, and on the back of the American Mercury dime, which was from 1916 to 1945. While there are several enlightened societies around the world calling themselves illuminated, it wasn't until May 1st, 1776, that Professor Adam Wissenap put together a secret society called the Illuminati. Its sole purpose, secretly, was to control the world. Wissenap was a genius of a particular sort as far as scheming and manipulation are concerned. He was a respected teacher of the University of Ingolstadt at that time, and had many connections in education. He became a Mason, but was also a Jesuit priest. He learned as much as he could and decided to put his own secret society together. He used a process of initiation and power dissemination among the ranks similar to the structure of a pyramid, where one sole individual or group at the top know what's going on, but no one else does. The only way that you can understand this is they only know a little until they succeed up the ranks and learn only a little bit more. In the meantime, they really don't know who is watching them or above them, keeping them in the highest circles of the order. They propose to control the world through a one-world government, which they stated they could do by converting existing Masons to concepts of Illuminism. Wissenap told them about the utopia that could be established on earth if everyone who knew would secretly work together to bring about this plan. It's ridiculous, I know. You think about it. If everybody knew the secret, then we would all work together. Why not just make the secret known? Being free thinkers and atheists, now the truth comes out, to begin with, they proposed abolishing religion, government, orders of class, rights to own property, or even to raise your own children. And they believed that the ends justified the means, meaning that whatever it takes to accomplish this task should be done without any hesitation. Within 2 years, they had over 3,000 members and many established lodges. Within several years, they were exposed and banished from Bavaria. Think about this. The documents were recovered and displayed in the British Museum, where they still exist today. This is an important historical fact that has been severely covered up in America. They continue to exist, however, in the form of the German Union and scattered reading societies. Through their combined fortunes, the members of the Illuminati gained control over the literary societies and printing press. They circulated printed papers showing falsities of religion and abuses of government, and promoted a general state of dispersion throughout the society, all the while blaming it on religion and governments. They sought to promote anarchy and revolution, whereby they would strip the monarchy or king of power, using the classes of people as a lever to ultimately bring down the power and put it back into their hands, all the while creating new forms of government which would be puppeted. They could secretly control from behind the scenes. In Germany, the lodges which preceded the Illuminati were the Lodge Theodore and the Lodge of Strict Observance. And in France, they were known as the Grand Orient Temple Masons. Their motto was liberty, equality, fraternity. In 1789, they beheaded the King and Queen of France and orchestrated what was historically known as the French Revolution. This was only the first of several revolutions to come, and Wissenef had succeeded in grabbing the existing regions of power in both Europe and America, entwining them both with this new philosophical concept and tightening all of the existing slack. By 1797, a book appeared in Europe by John Robinson called Proofs of a Conspiracy Against the Religions and Governments of Europe, carried out in secret meetings of Freemasons, Illuminati, and reading societies. Kind of covers it all, doesn't it? Then in 1799, written in another country and in another language, Abbe Augustin Barruel published his 4-volume study entitled Memoirs Illustrating the History of Jacobism. Woo! Then in 1826, William Morgan, an American Freemason, who had written a book entitled The Illustrations of Freemasonry, was abducted and drowned in Lake Ontario. Because of the existence of these books, as well as the murder scandal, there was a nationwide furor resisting all of the creation, and basically an anti-Masonic political party was created in 1829. After this, there was a temporary drop in membership in the lodges, but their control over the press soon caused the anger to diminish. There is what is called the Colombian faction of the Illuminati, which came over to America early on. The documents that were recovered in Germany showed that the symbol of the Illuminati Society was a pyramid, and the eye and the capstone as shown on the back of the $1 bill. The symbol of Columbia Broadcast System, or CBS, is an all-seeing eye. The U.S. is located in the District of Columbia. There is a Columbia University and Columbia Space Shuttle, for that matter. The Americans, or the Americas, have been called the New World since Columbus. However, Columbus did not come here first. There had already been a New England charter, and a colony was established for over 20 years before he had ever arrived in America, in the East, that is. We have this area called New England, where the first colonies were established. The eventual American Revolution wasn't an actual real revolution. The Founding Fathers, all Masons for the most part, did not go to war with their parents. that being the monarchy of England. There are many American presidents who are related to strong European bloodlines and great wealth. When the York Rite Masons of York, in England that is, came over here, they settled on the East Coast and declared it New York. Then they went to work to build the Empire State. In New York sits the Statue of Liberty, given to us by France, holding up the Masonic torch of enlightenment. The highest degree of Freemasonry are at the 32nd and 33rd. And on the back of the dollar bill, the Great Seal of the United States, there are 32 feathers on the right wing of the eagle and 33 on the left. Underneath the pyramid, the Latin term Novus Ordo Scorum, which means the New World Order. It has appeared on the dollar bill since 1933. Karl Marx and Frederick Engels were students of Wissenap and Illuminism. The 10 platforms that make up communism are identical to the goals of Illuminism, or the Illuminati. The Communist Manifesto, for that matter, appeared in 1848, and communism itself as a solid revolutionary movement in Russia in the early 1900s in the form of the Bolshevik Revolution. One particular group of families made up of the Russells and the Pierponts founded several scholastic institutions, 2 of which were Yale and Princeton. Reverend James Pierpont and Reverend Noadiah Russell co-founded Yale in 1701. In 1833, General William Huntington, Russell and Alphonso Taft, grandfather of William Taft, former President of the United States, founded a secret society at Yale called the Skull and Bones, or the Brotherhood of Death. General Huntington's brother-in-law, Samuel Russell, founded Russell & Co., the world's largest opium smuggling syndicate of its time. This provided them the huge fortunes in their millions. Later influential graduates of the Skull and Bones studied philosophies and other subjects in Germany, where many prominent illuminated teachers were at that time. Probably the most influential family in the circle of power throughout the last century has been the Harriman family. Edward H. Harriman amassed over $60 million in the late 1800s now, in a swift stock deal involving the Union Pacific Railroad and Kun Loeb, the 1904 Northern Securities case. William Averell Harriman, his son, graduated from Skull and Bones, or Yale, and their fraternity in 1913. Averell controlled Harriman and Company, which owns Brown Brothers and Harriman, the world's largest private investment bank. Prescott Bush, George Bush's father, was initiated and graduated in 1917. Prescott Bush, as well as some other Skull and Bones graduates, were directors of the bank. These banks, as well as the Grand Jury Trust and the Union Banking Corp., all of which were controlled by the Skull and Bones, were the most influential entities in building up the Soviet Union, from which the early times of the Bolshevik Revolution in the early 1900s, through contracts to improve mining of raw materials and rebuilding of the railroad transportation infrastructure. These same banks were also directly responsible for financing Hitler's rise to power and the buildup of the Nazi socialism through contracts and subsidiaries in their German banks, or German banks. The purpose for the building of the world wars was to create a need for peace, so that a United Nations may be needed and then created as a solution for establishing peace between nations all over the world as a body of government with a world court and a world police to keep nations in place and to concentrate power into a few people's hands. Whose hands? William Howard Taft, Skull and Bones graduate of 1878, helped found the American Society for the Judicial Settlement of International Disputes in 1920. This soon became the League to Enforce the Peace, then the League of Nations, and then finally the United Nations. If you look at things from a historical perspective, the UN today has implemented, or it is in the process of implementing, all of the planks of Adam Wissenap's Manifesto of Illuminism. When George Bush took us to war in the Persian Gulf, he stated boldly that he didn't need the approval of Congress anymore, that is, to declare war, because the UN mandated it. We have sacrificed a large part of our U.S. sovereignty. The UN has recently passed a Declaration of Children's Rights. It is now the right of the child to receive vaccinations. Think about this. Which do more harm than good. And a parent doesn't have the right to interfere. Parents who interfere with the rights of a child or abuse a child or are accused of abuse can have their children taken by the state. If you are seen spanking a child more than 2 or 3 times, the child abuse police will be unleashed against you. This amounts to nothing more than a giant shift of power from us to them. The only way they can do this is by tricking us into thinking that we are so irresponsible that we can't even manage our own affairs and lives, and that the state is so better suited to raise our children. If you like the United Nations still, then you just wait till they hit you with a UN tax, which is coming. This brings us to the World Bank, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, both created by the UN and banking in general. In Switzerland, there is a building, a big building, that is divided into 3 parts. And if you look at it from above, it looks like the symbol of peace, or a rune. This is the headquarters of the United Nations and World Bank. The 3rd part of the world headquarters is Freemasonry, is the world headquarters of Freemasonry, for that matter. It's so convenient that they can go back and forth between coffee breaks. In Brussels, there is a computer that they call the Beast, which stores the names and information of every person in the world. And that was created years ago. By now, it probably orbits the planet. The U.S. is a corporation located in the District of Columbia, and each of its citizens is a franchise of the U.S. identified by the Social Security number. One of the main influences of British Masonry comes to America in the area of banking. Cecil Rhodes made his fortunes from diamond mines in South Africa. Millions and millions of dollars were secured and put into a trust in his will to be used to finance the creation of secret societies for the furtherance of Anglo-Saxon rulership in the New World Order, and the eventual recapture of the U.S. for England. Through the creation of a central bank in America, Cecil Rhodes formed what is called the Rhodes Scholarship at Oxford. There is also the Round Table in England, put together by Alfred Milner. Bill Clinton is a Rhodes Scholar, as well as other things. In Europe, at least at this time, the Rothschilds were the leading banking clan. Paul Warburg, an agent for the Rothschilds, as well as several members of the Skull and Bones, was instrumental in setting up the Federal Reserve central banking system in America in 1913. President Andrew Jackson has been quoted as saying that the central bankers were a den of vipers and thieves, and he intended to drive them out of America in the earlier times. He also stated that if the American people understood the rank of injustice of our banking system, they would be in a revolution by the morning. Woo. President Thomas Jefferson stated that if the American people ever allowed the private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and the corporations that grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent that their fathers had conquered. Abraham Lincoln took action against their central bank in his time, and he was killed for it. President Garfield was shot and killed shortly after, declaring that whoever controls the supply of currency would control the business and activities of the people. Baron Nathan Mayer de Rothschild once said, "Let me issue and control a nation's money, and I care not who writes the laws." The measure of a nation's wealth is the sum total of its goods, services, natural resources, and private wealth. In early America, private wealth consisted mostly of gold and silver. This is the great monetary standard because of its inherent value. For a long time, gold was worth $20 an ounce. An ounce of gold, a gold coin, was a $20 piece. Our grandfathers and great-grandfathers found it a hassle to carry around all of these large transactions due to the heavy weight and frequent robbery. So out of the kindness of their heart, the bankers would allow the people to leave their gold and silver on deposit, while the bank would issue a gold or silver certificate, a piece of paper that was as good as gold. It said on the bill, "Pay to the bearer upon demand in gold or silver." So after the bankers started to issue these notes, they saw after a while that the people were not using the gold as much and coming back to withdraw it. And they could issue a loan for more notes than the gold that they had to back it up. This is the true source of inflation. A short time later, they placed the gold and the silver certificates with Federal Reserve notes, which are worthless in the replacement. A short time after, without gold and silver, the real valuables, America was essentially bankrupt. The Federal Reserve is a private corporation. When Federal Reserve notes are printed, they are loaned to the U.S. Treasury, or the people. Notes that cost 2 cents each are printed by the Fed and loaned to the U.S. government at face value plus 8.5% interest compounded. Think about this. The interest is collected each year by the IRS, the repo man, for lack of a better way to describe it, also a private corporation controlled by the Federal Reserve with a federal deficit of $4.8 trillion. This is way back when. So far, the interest is in the neighborhood of $200 billion, which is drained from our economy each year in the form of income taxes. The words Federal Reserve Note first appeared on our paper currency in 1933. In the it is common sense that if you are borrowing money from someone and you have to pay interest, then where the money will come from? Where will the money come from to pay that interest? If you have to borrow it, then that creates more interest. Obviously, in this situation, there is no way out. However, coins are minted by the U.S. Treasury and are worth their face value as currency. There is a clause written into the agreement which provides the option to buy back the right to issue our own currency. The solution to the problem of the national debt is to coin a $4 trillion coin, or a few of them, and use it to pay off the Federal Reserve. It would have to be accepted, and it would even have to be made out of copper, nickel, clad. In 1963, President Kennedy passed an executive order calling for the printing of $450 billion in U.S.-backed debt-free currency. Shortly after, he was killed, and soon his successor, Lyndon Johnson, took office, and as soon as he took office, that is, the first thing that he did was suspend the executive order and the printing of the currency. If you look hard enough, you can find $2 bills from 1963 that say the U.S. Treasury at the top instead of the Federal Reserve note. 1964 was the last year silver was used as the standard coin metal, and coincidentally, Kennedy's face first appeared on that $50. Now, 23 years later, silver is $5 per ounce instead of $1. And if you still don't see how this works, just realize that 23 years later, you now need 5 times as much money or work to buy the same ounce of silver. And 60 years later, after they removed gold, we have to pay 20 times as much for the same ounce of gold, $400 an ounce. The moral of this little story is that we are being ripped off by the biggest sleight of hand money scam ever devised. There is a Masonic term for this kind of deception that they call hoodwinked. We are the sheep and we have the wool pulled over our eyes. It may appear to be a grand conspiracy, but where you think that everyone knows what's going on, or may say that it's impossible for everyone to work together on such a large scale for so long, so secretly. But the truth is that not everybody knows everything. Some people that are a part of this establishment only know a little of the truth. That is, not everybody knows everything. Some people that are a part of the establishment only know a little bit. And some don't really have a clue. Some just follow the money. But most that hold high degrees have a pretty good idea. It's not a lot of knowledge about the inner workings of the conspiracy. Big name families like the Rockefellers and J.P. Morgan, even in their time, were not the main financial powers in America. They were highly paid agents, frontmen, and spokespeople. Okay. Henry Ford resigned from the Ford Foundation, citing an inability to maintain controls over affairs. The Rockefeller Foundation ties into the controls of the American Medical Association and the public education system through the printing of textbooks. How can you control what somebody learns? Control what they read. Wow. The Rockefeller family got started with the help of the Harriman family. You remember them? The Whitneys, Eli Whitney's family that is, the Standard Oil of New York, Sony, now Exxon. They have a lot of influence even today. All of the founding fathers of this nation were Masons, as well as almost all of them presidents. The building of the early American colonies, as well as the American Revolution, would not have been possible if it was not for a very special plant. The cannabis hemp plant was used throughout the world since the beginning of time for just about everything that mankind needed. Paper was made from hemp, used for books, Bibles, maps, and money. You can produce 4 times as much paper from an acre of hemp than you can from acres of trees at 1/4 of the cost and 1/5 of the pollution. It is 10 times stronger and lasts up to 1,000 years instead of only 50. And it can be recycled 4 times as many times as paper from wood pulp. The Constitution, copies of it, were printed on hemp paper, as well as the first 3 drafts of the Declaration of Independence. Even the great sailing ships like the U.S. Constitution, the USS Constitution, were made primarily out of hemp. Hemp is the strongest natural fiber on the planet. Hemp is 26 times stronger than cotton and 10 times longer lasting. The first Levi jeans were made out of hemp. Wow. As well as all of the soldiers' clothes from the Revolutionary War. It needs no chemicals to grow and has very few natural enemies. And it grows in the widest variety of climates of any weed or plant. It is also the fastest growing plant on the planet, growing 4 times faster than corn, absorbing 4 times more carbon dioxide than any other plant. That alone makes it a cure for global warming, reflecting harmful gamma rays from its canopy, keeping us from aging, and also from any harmful rays of the sun. The seeds from the hemp plant provide the highest source of complete vegetable protein of any food source on the planet. Wow. Even higher than soybeans, for that matter. It has also been realized lately that the hemp seed is the highest source of essential fatty acids in the world. Essential, meaning necessary for life. Fatty acids are necessary for us and beneficial for cleaning the cholesterol out of our arteries naturally. All oils in the supermarket are bad since they are placed in clear plastic containers and exposed to direct sunlight. They become as bad as saturated fats and end up causing cholesterol buildup, leading to heart attacks, etc. Hemp seeds, or hemp seed oil, can be used for everything from machine-grade lubricants for engines and other machine-replacing petroleum oils from the ground. Henry Ford built his Ford Model T using hemp to line the side panels. The impact strength was 10 times stronger than steel. Wow. This alone would eliminate many vehicular deaths today. The Model T was also designed to run on hemp-based fuel, which Henry Ford grew. According to Popular Mechanics in February of 1938, concentrated extracts of cannabis from the flowers were the second most used medicines in America for over 150 years and for over 100 separate medical illnesses. It is probably the best natural medicine for glaucoma, stress, controlling nausea, and works very well for arthritis, asthma, and epilepsy. Not to mention a hash oil, if eaten, cures cancer and AIDS. 2 months of eating hash oil, just a little drop on your finger every day, will cure you. Now, cure is a bad term because homeostasis in the body is directly related to cellular communication. The mitochondrial cells of the body need a response conduit. There's receptors in your body right now that are designed for the cannabis plant. They're called cannabinoids. Your brain produces one naturally called adenine. It's called the runner's high to some folks. It's the same feeling we get when we eat chocolate. Now, this produced naturally in your body. Your body has these receptors. God created this plant, which is called the tree of life in the Bible, to be in the center of the garden. Now it says in Revelation 22 that this plant will no longer be accursed, which means that at one time it was, right now. It will produce 12 different fruits each month. Interesting is that orbitally rearranged monoatomic elements of precious metals and minerals like gold, when they're purified in pyramidal vortex energy, can be mixed with water and act as that response conduit for cellular communication. And to plants is a super plant food that makes them grow 3 times bigger and 10 times faster. Now think about this as an agricultural principle from the Bible. This is what we're taught, but it's not how we're taught it. Getting back to this, it is estimated that hemp would have at least 50,000 commercial uses if it were legal in America today. The reason that hemp is illegal in America today is because the main families in America, the Masons, the Harrimans, the Rockefellers, Standard Oil, and the Whitneys, Eli Whitney with his cotton gin, the DuPont, chemicals and wood, pulp processing, and cotton pesticides, the DuPonts.